Hey everybody, Steven here, and today I'm covering the HDR settings for the Samsung Neo G7 43-inch monitor. With this one, I do want to start by saying, for anybody that's trying to access the 144 Hz, if you're having trouble with that, game mode has to be turned on in order to get access to that. If it's turned off, it'll just be stuck at 120 Hz. Now I have this at 120 Hz because really they're overclocking to the 144 Hz, so it creates a strobing effect on my camera that just looks really bad if I'm trying to showcase any video. So this is set at the 120 Hz, still at 4K with HDR. I had one comment on the SDR video talking about this, and they said for them, they were only able to get the 144 Hz at 3840 by 1600. I've not had that issue, but somebody else did. With me, I've gotten the full 4K resolution with this, both at the 144 Hz and the 120 here. But I just wanted to cover that in case anybody else was wondering about the 144 Hz and they weren't able to access that. Moving on, these are stills for all of the settings here. This is just the initial quick access menu showcasing here. The response time is faster. The game picture mode is RPG. I use the same one that I was using with the SDR video here. I do believe you can just adjust all of these different settings. Doesn't matter what the preset is. Once you just calibrate this to what I have, it should look the same. The refresh rate is 120 Hz, HDR is on, which is at the bottom. It's saying variable refresh rate is off, but if we jump to the last page of the settings here, it will show that it actually is on. And I do have G-Sync compatibility mode enabled in the NVIDIA control panel here. But this is all the settings for this first quick access. Now let's shift over to the game tab here. Again, game mode is on, confirming the response time is faster. I don't have the virtual aim, that's off, core lighting, surround sound, that doesn't really matter. The dynamic black equalizer is set to 1 with this. And then with the HDR tone mapping, which is at the bottom of this game tab here, I just have the HDR 10 plus gaming turned on and then game HDR turned on out of those options. After that, we will move to the expert settings tab for the picture mode here. The brightness is set to 40, contrast is 40, sharpness is 8, color is 25, and then there's no adjustment to the tint. And notice that the apply picture settings is grayed out. You don't have access to that, otherwise it would apply this to all sources. When game mode is turned on, you don't have access to that. So when you boot up a console, you're gonna have to go through these settings again and then just calibrate this to the settings that we have here, and then it will match everything. So it doesn't just automatically apply it to all the sources, again with game mode on, unfortunately. And then the picture clarity settings here, you don't have access to that when game mode is turned on as well. Moving on, the local dimming is on high, the contrast enhancer is on low, color tone is standard, and then the white balance here. With this, you don't have access to the 20 point, you have access to the 2 point, and with the 2 point here, it's just like the SDR video. This monitor lends itself to lean just a little bit red, so I have that turned down. That's the only one I've adjusted, and I've turned it down to -15. After that, the gamma is the ST 0.2084, and with that, the adjustment, I've turned this to -1. After that is the shadow detail. I have that at -3. The color space settings is set to auto. There is no smart calibration with this. And then again, variable refresh rate control. This is turned on. So the quick access says that it is off, and then this says that it is on. But again, I have the NVIDIA G-Sync compatibility mode turned on. Next, for PC, I just wanted to confirm the resolution here. Again, 4K at 120 Hz. This is using the default color settings, and you can see there it is confirming 10-bit color, which is HDR. Next is the color settings here, and I tried to make this as minimal as possible just so it's not a big headache for everybody. I only adjusted the contrast to 75. This took quite a while to kind of hone in because all the settings that I would adjust here, I try to see if I could actually lean that back to the monitor controls. That way, again, you're not having to tinker around with this too much, and it just is a more simple process. So next, let's look at some gameplay from Destiny 2 on the PC, and then I'll also showcase some gameplay from Horizon Forbidden West on the PlayStation 5. I want to point this out, something I'm probably going to say multiple times in this video. I said it with the SDR video. This is meant as a starting off point for your own settings. So hopefully it helps you get to a good starting point, because out of the box, this thing just doesn't look that great in my opinion. Now, once you are here, you also have to keep in mind that you're going to need to adjust each game's individual HDR settings. So the game may not look great when you boot it up. Once you adjust everything, then it will look better. Just because by default, whatever settings they have on that, they just may not look great, right? And that is both for the PC and consoles. Now, with Destiny 2 here, I think it looks great. If anything, maybe the blues just get that negative hue to them, like if you took a negative of a photo. So it does that a little bit, but outside of that, it plays really well. Next, let's cover the adjustments to start with if this isn't quite to your liking, where you're not going to completely just change everything. I would start with contrast first. After that, you could go to brightness, and then you could adjust the local dimming. With this, you're really adjusting the intensity of the light and black areas on whatever game or just the screen, right? So if this looks too dark, then you could start with the contrast and the brightness, and then again adjust the local dimming. So you could go from high to low and see if those get you where you want this to be in terms of just the overall look. After that, I would move to the contrast enhancer, shadow detail, and then the dynamic black equalizer. And this is just taking darker areas, and again, you're trying to lighten them up or potentially make them darker. And this is the exact same thing that I talked about on the SDR video in the exact same order. So these are the bigger settings that are just going to help with overall picture clarity with these darker or lighter areas. And with these settings, personally, I'm much happier with the HDR experience. When I first started doing this and I was working on the review, I really did not like this HDR. Again, this doesn't look great out of the box. So it's been quite a lot of work just tinkering around with the settings to just nail this down. And I don't think my settings are going to be for everybody, but again, it can get you pretty close, and hopefully it helps you out, because out of the box, this thing, I was pretty upset because I was like, man, I spent a lot of money on this monitor and it does not look good, both in SDR and in HDR. Moving over to consoles now, though, this is the Burning Shores DLC with Forbidden West. And here, again, you're going to want to adjust the game settings for HDR. And luckily, this has a handful that you get to actually adjust, not just the brightness. Because some of them, I've played games where the HDR setting is literally just like adjust the brightness. With this, you get a little bit more with that. So you can kind of adjust this just right to your liking. And that's going to be dependent upon what you want, but you still get to use the settings for the actual monitor and the panel settings there as just a baseline, and then adjust the game versus just booting up a game and being like, well, this looks horrible. Check your settings with the game first, and then if you can't nail that down, then you go back and you start looking at the things that I talked about earlier, starting with the contrast and the brightness and the local dimming. Then you run through those. So typically what I'll do is I'll check lighter areas first, just see, hey, how's the vibrancy with everything? Do the colors look really good? And then I go into a darker area and I make sure I can still see everything, right? Because I don't want it so dark that you just can't see anything, because that's not going to be fun. You also don't want it so that in terms of shadows and details, you actually start to lose all of that fidelity with the game. And I think this still looks really good in these darker areas. I do think it may not be to everyone's likings, which is why I have that list of things that you can adjust, where you could potentially brighten this up just a little bit. But don't start there. Check your menu, adjust any of the HDR settings within the game first, and you can nail this down, hopefully there, because that is so much easier to do than messing with the panel settings. So that's going to be it for this video. I hope this helps everybody out with their settings for HDR on the Samsung Neo G7 43-inch monitor. Like I said, I know it's kind of frustrating when you get a monitor like this, as expensive as this is, and it doesn't look incredible out of the box. But hopefully this gets you to a great starting point, if not one that you could just put it to this and leave it there, and it works great for you. If you do have any questions about these settings though, or any concerns, let me know in the comment section and I will make sure to answer that for you there. If you guys like the video, hit the like button for me. If you want to continue to follow along with all my content, hit the subscribe button for me. And as always, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.